Today I'm going to be answering some of the most asked questions of Volleyball Legends, and to get these questions, I asked people in my Discord questions they had on the game and picked ones that I thought were good. Also, be sure to subscribe and like the video because it helps a ton. What's the best way to use Sonu's tilt? In my opinion, Sonu's two strongest uses of his tilt is his cut shot, which you can hit by spiking a ball while leaning towards the right if you're facing, or on this side if you're facing this way, or left if you're on the other side facing this way. And his second strongest ability is to hit the back row with his S tilts easier than most other styles can. Those, in my opinion, are the two best ways you can use his tilts. But he has a ton of other ways you can use it as well, like to slightly hit around blocks and stuff like that. How do you make a set receive go up but not too far forward? Make sure you aren't moving forward when you set receive it. If you set receive it while not moving or actually moving backwards, it won't go quite as far forwards. But using a low power bump can also help this. A lot of times if you're set receiving and you're accidentally pushing it over the court, it's probably maybe because your character has a high set stat and you're also moving forward, so that doesn't help at all. What's the hitboxes on the bump, set, and dive, and how does the stats of the style change that? These are the hitboxes roughly, and the hitboxes are set. They don't change when the stat increases. The only thing that changes is the power of those mechanics go up. Although dive, when it has a higher stat, just takes you farther when you dive. So I guess that one does change a bit, and here's that. How much elo is pro? 1200 elo is pro, and each rank is 100 elo. So diamond 1 is 900, gold 1 is 600, silver 1 is 300, and bronze 1 is 0. Does tilt make a huge impact in gameplay? Yes and no. For Sonu, yes, but for other styles, like I said, yes and no. For side-to-side tilts, not really a huge impact for other styles, but being able to time your S tilt to hit the backcourt is pretty important. And for lower spikers or setters without much spike power, S tilting is very important, as it's about the only way to spike for them. So for Sonu, always yes, tilting's huge. It's his ability, but for the other styles, not so much, kind of halfway. Do you have any pro tips regarding receiving the ball? Pretty much it's going to be reading the hitter very closely, paying very close attention to who's the scoring threat on the other team and what/how they like to hit the ball. If they are spiking close, fish it or set block in his face, or a well-timed set block in his face. If he constantly S tilts, maybe back up a touch more when he is far away from the net, or just go for a counter spike because it's really easy to counter spike people who are S tilting. Just adapting throughout the game to how the hitter plays and guarding what he likes to do a lot is going to be the best general defending tip on receiving the ball, at least on spikes. How does secret pity work? Pretty much when you get to 100, you get a guaranteed secret. If you have one selected, you have a 50% chance to get that, or a coin flip chance to get that one your first time you hit pity. And in the case that you don't get that secret with that 50% chance, the next time you hit your 100 pity again, it's 100% chance that you get that secret. Why can't I get out of silver? Where it is easy to blame randoms, especially when they sell, as someone who solo queues a ton, I understand the inclination to blame randoms, but at the end of the day, you can only control yourself. So just make yourself as good of an individual player as possible, and rank will follow after that. And it's likely that if you're stuck in silver and can't get out of silver, there's probably things you could improve on as well, outside of just getting better teammates. Why don't you play for leaderboard? I'm more focused on making content, and having to spend hours out of the day grinding twos would take time away from that for a title that to me doesn't really mean anything. And I wouldn't even use it anyways. I would just keep my content creator title on, because that's what I am first. What do you think is more OP for serving? Sonu's tilt serve or Osami's float serve? I'm going to assume you meant Atsumi, as he is the one with the float serve, but it's by far the float serve. Sonu's serve is really no threat at all in my opinion against good teams. I mean, it can be slightly deceiving since he can add the tilt in, but it doesn't even come close comparing to, the Mia Twins serve being able to almost curve. How do you properly spike so receivers have a hard time? Well, assuming that you already have a strong base knowledge of how to spike, you want something a little more advanced. In my opinion, there's two really high level, hard to defend shots, and that's a flick or shift locking in the direction you want to spike and quickly spiking the ball, usually just where you see a gap in their defense, or delayed hits where you don't hit instantly and instead hold the hit for an extra second or two and then spike. This is almost like a skill check on the defender, and you can also play with the W or S tilting depending on where they are standing to hit at a depth they aren't at. But again, this is all assuming you already have a very good base of understanding for spiking, and if you don't, I have multiple guides on that. Should the setter spike or only the spiker? And is it better to run two spikers or one spiker and one setter? The simple answer is both players should at least be somewhat of a spiking threat in 2v2s. One spiker and one setter can work, but also so can two spikers. The only thing is, if you are running a spiker and setter lineup, you need to make sure that the setter still knows not to set every time, because if they only ever set, the defenders will just double the spiker and it'll become incredibly predictable. So if you are running a setter in twos, just mix in some spikes yourself, or just run 2 spikers, which in my opinion is sort of meta. How to jump set better. For beginners, look where you want the set to go, W tilt, and then set. This will send the ball right where your camera is facing. For people who already know that and want something a little more, make sure that when you run up to set, you're paying very close attention to where defenders are and how they're kind of playing right now, and then determine the side that you want to set to, or if you just spike it yourself. It sounds obvious, but so many times people forget to just pay attention to what defenders are doing. Does ping help your gameplay? Yes, very much so. If you're on 200 ping and I'm on 30, we could run the game back 1,000 times and you never beat me. And the reason is because the game is very fast paced and needs you to react incredibly quickly to spikes and whatnot. If you're on 200 ping, it's very hard to do that because all of your reactions are going to be incredibly delayed. Why is it when you do your soluble shift lock serve, you ace, but when I do it, they get it up? That's because my serve is mental and not super mechanical. Knowing how to do my serve is very easy. Look away and shift lock where you then want it to go. But the reason I ace with it is because I'm trying to get in the defender's head, which if the defenders are locked in, they can usually shut down. My serve is mostly just safe and can score a lot of times if they aren't locked in. And also I do a fair bit of targeting, especially of setters and stuff like that. But if defenders are super locked in, they can usually pretty easily shut down my serve. What's the best way to earn lucky style spins free to play? There's a number of ways, like leveling up and playing. There's hitting your pity spins on regular yen, which have similar odds to lucky yen. There's codes every weekend, and on top of that, the 2 hours that they do sometimes where they give out lucky spins for just being in the game. There's honestly a ton of ways, but really those are the best ones. Is it hard for you to make videos? Not really. The only part that's hard for me is the thumbnail part, so I'd consider maybe getting someone to do that in the future, but making the videos themselves, not really, no. Why does the higher level players all know power bump to receive instead of diving? Bumping over diving is mostly for positioning, honestly. If you dive on every serve, it's likely you're going to start each time very far back on the court, which kind of makes it a bit harder, whereas you can instead lower power bump to get stronger positioning. Although it's not always a bad idea to dive, especially if you're struggling with receiving, I'd suggest diving as it can be a crutch for that. But if you're pretty confident in your receiving and you're pretty confident against the enemy team's serve, I would probably bump up to like forward and middle. That way you can get stronger positioning. What's the best way to receive serves and spikes? Set receiving or low power bump? You can set receive on characters with low set stat, but I'd really suggest, just like the last question, getting pretty solid with pro controls. At first they are hard to use, but worth making the switch, and the best way I can break these 3 down is dive as a crutch if you're struggling with serves, set if you don't have time to lower the bump power, or maybe if you're on a low set style, and lower power bump normally for most receives since it's good for getting strong positioning. The first 2 questions are similar, so I'll go ahead and answer both at the same time. Some underrated styles of volleyball legends are Iwazini for the rares, Kuze for the legendaries, and Bokuto for the godlies. Iwazini and Kuze are probably one of the more underrated styles. When should you be blocking in 2v2 ranked? A good tip for blocking is the closer they are to the net, the more safe it is to block, as you'll take up more and more of their spiking area the closer they are. If someone spikes from super far back, blocking is kind of dumb, as you take up very little of the area at which they can spike, especially compared to if you just back up and receive. But if they are against the net, blocking is much safer, as you can take up like most of their spiking area and force them to go for a cut, in which your teammate can just stand on the cut and receive it fairly easily. Now, you shouldn't usually block unless you're on very high blocking styles like Oigawa or the Mia twins. You should probably set block instead, but you should know that set blocking was nerfed and does need to be timed, as it has about a 2-second uptime before it goes down and defenders can literally hit right through you. What is your opinion on time skips potentially coming back in future updates? I believe a dev has actually touched on this, but I'm going to give my own opinion. I don't think it will happen, and even if it does, it won't be for a very long time, because if you do bring back what's supposed to be limiteds, then it wouldn't have been truly limited in the first place. Personally, I think as long as there's a good permanent alternative in the game that's solid, I don't mind limiteds not coming back too much, to be honest. But I know it's a topic where a lot of people want the time skips coming back because maybe they didn't play at that time, and I understand that as well. How big is the skill difference between low elo pros and high elo pros? Large. I'd say the very, very best pros out there are probably 2 to 3 times better than low elo pros. But I also don't think elo is the greatest tracker of how good someone is, as in the past it's been very easily gamed. with things like ping abusing and win trading. You've bundled a few questions, and since my tier list largely answers both of the top ones, I'll just touch on the bottom one. Is fishing the ball and snake jump fair? Snake jump is mostly just a flashy tech. It's not really a super comp tech that's going to get you more points if you're doing it opposed to not doing it. But fishing the ball is something that does take a massive impact on the gameplay, and if the enemy team is setting close to the net, it's one of the strongest mechanics you can do. In my opinion, it shouldn't exist and changes the game substantially, but it's fair in the fact that both teams can do it if they want. Is Volleyball Legends a game likely to have longevity and be able to sustain an active community over a long amount of time? Good question. I make content on it, so hopefully, and I think the game has done very well over the 7-ish months I think it's been out and has stayed very consistent with weekly updates. So I do think it's a game that could be around for a while if the devs want it to be. It's a volleyball game, and as long as there's people who like the sport, there will be a market for the game. So I do think it'll be a game with a lot of longevity to it, and I think the devs are very solid behind the game. So to answer your question, yes.